At a family dinner, she announced, "My ex will always have a place in my life. If that bothers you, then don't marry me." Everyone stared at me. I just said, okay. By the next week, invitations were canceled, and she realized the marriage was too. It all came to a head at a Sunday dinner. One of those tense pre-wedding family gatherings where two tribes who have nothing in common are forced to pretend they're about to be joined for life. My parents, a quiet traditional couple who have been married for 40 years, were on one side of the table. On the other side were my fiancée, Clara's parents, a pair of retired therapists who spoke in a language of pop psychology and believed every boundary was a suggestion. And in the middle of it all was Leo. Leo was Clara's ex-boyfriend. But to hear her and her family tell it, he was more like a spiritual brother, an essential part of her personal ecosystem. He was at every holiday, every birthday, every dinner. He had a key to her parents' house. He was the constant smug ghost at the feast of our relationship. I made my feelings about him clear from the beginning. I'm not a jealous man, but I believe in boundaries. I believe a past relationship should be in the past, not sitting at your dinner table making inside jokes with your future wife. My objections were always met with the same condescending lecture from Clara and her parents about my possessive masculine tendencies and my inability to embrace a more fluid modern concept of family. They treated my traditional values like a charming but ultimately primitive character flaw. I went along with it, not because I was a simp, but because I was playing the long game. I wanted to see how far she would push it. I needed to know if the foundation we were building on was solid rock or just sand. The topic of the wedding seating chart came up over dessert. My mother, a woman who speaks her mind with a quiet but firm dignity, had a simple question. "Clara, dear," she began looking at the draft of the chart. "I see you have Leo seated at the main family table next to your aunt. I was just wondering if that was the best place for him. Perhaps one of the friends' tables would be more appropriate." The air in the room instantly went from chilly to arctic. Clara's mother put her fork down with a clatter. Clara herself flushed a deep, angry red. "My mother's just concerned about optics, Clara," I said, stepping in before she could explode. "Having your ex-boyfriend at the family table might send a confusing message to our guests." Clara turned on me, her eyes flashing. "A confusing message. The only confusing message here is that you and your parents are still living in the 1950s. Leo is my best friend. He is family. He was a part of my life long before you were, and he will be a part of my life long after. Well, he will always be a part of my life." Her father chimed in then, his voice dripping with condescension. "Ben, we've talked about this. Your rigid definitions of relationships are what cause insecurity. Clara and Leo have a beautiful, evolved connection. You should be celebrating that, not trying to control it." It was a perfectly executed 2-on-1 attack, with her mother nodding in solemn agreement. They had been practicing this kind of psychological maneuvering for years. But this time it was different. This time, my parents were there watching this woman and her family treat me and our impending marriage with such casual, arrogant disrespect. Clara, feeling emboldened by her parents' support, decided to press her advantage. She stood up, her hands on her hips, and delivered the line that would bring the entire parade to a crashing halt. She looked from my mother to me, her voice loud and clear for the entire room to hear. "Let me make this perfectly clear for everyone. My ex will always be a part of my life. He will be at our wedding. He will be at our children's baptisms. He will be at our holidays. That is a non-negotiable fact. If you don't like that, then don't marry me." The ultimatum hung in the silent room. It was a declaration of war. Everyone stared at me, waiting for my reaction. They expected me to argue, to plead, to back down, as I had done so many times before, just to keep the peace. Clara had a smug, triumphant look on her face. She thought she had me trapped. I didn't say a word for a full minute. I looked at her, standing there in all her defiant arrogance. I looked at her enabling parents, nodding in approval. I looked at my own parents, their faces a mixture of shock and quiet dignity. And then I looked back at her. The long game was over. She had just shown me the final stress test results, and the structure was condemned. I gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Okay," I said. The word was so quiet so devoid of emotion that it seemed to confuse her. Okay, she repeated, her tone mocking. Okay, you'll behave. Okay, you'll stop being a jealous child. No, I said, standing up from the table. I folded my napkin and placed it on my plate. Okay, I won't marry you. I turned to my parents. Mom, Dad, we're leaving. And without another look at Clara or her stunned, speechless family, the three of us walked out of the house and out of their lives. Update 1. The drive home with my parents was silent for the first 10 minutes. My father just drove, his eyes fixed on the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel. My mother stared out the window. I think they were waiting for me to break down to show some sign of regret or heartbreak. But I felt nothing but a profound, almost surreal sense of peace. The weight of a 5-year parade had just been lifted from my shoulders. Finally, my dad spoke, his voice low and steady. Are you sure about this, son? I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I said. My mother turned around from the passenger seat. There were no tears in her eyes, just a quiet, fierce pride. Good, she said. She was not the one for you. We were just waiting for you to see it. When I got back to my own house, the house I had bought, the one Clara had been living in for the past 2 years, my phone was a war zone. Dozens of missed calls, a flood of texts from Clara, her parents, her friends, even from Leo himself. They ranged from furious to confused to pleading. Clara, what was that? You just walked out? You can't be serious. Claire's mom. Ben, you have deeply hurt our daughter. You need to come back and apologize immediately. Leo, dude, what the hell is your problem? You're blowing this way out of proportion. They were all operating under the same delusion that this was a tantrum, a momentary fit of pique that could be smoothed over with a few condescending lectures and a non-apology. They hadn't yet grasped the finality of the word okay. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I made a single phone call. It was to our wedding planner, a woman named Cynthia, who was a consummate professional. Cynthia, I said, it's Ben. There's been a change of plans. The wedding is off permanently. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. What, Ben? The invitations are scheduled to be mailed out tomorrow morning. I need you to stop that immediately, I said. Do not send out a single invitation. As for the rest of it, I need you to begin the cancellation process for all vendors. My fiancée and her family will be your point of contact for all financial matters moving forward. They were handling the payments, so they will need to handle the refunds and the cancellation fees. This was a crucial part of my strategy. I hadn't paid for the wedding. Her father had a fact he had made sure everyone was aware of. Now the financial burden of unwinding a massive 6-figure event was his problem, not mine. The next morning, the real shockwave hit. Cynthia, doing her job with ruthless efficiency, began making the calls. The first one, of course, was to Clara's parents. I would have paid $1,000 to be a fly on the wall for that conversation. The caterer, the florist, the band, the venue. Each call was another nail in the coffin of their grand social event. Another massive, non-refundable deposit lost. Clara's father called me, his voice a strangled roar. What have you done? Do you know how much money we are losing? You can't just do this. I didn't do anything, I said, my voice calm. I just accepted your daughter's terms. She gave me an ultimatum. Accept her ex-boyfriend as a permanent fixture in our marriage or don't marry her. I chose the latter. I respected her boundary. The consequences of that choice are now yours to manage. He started sputtering about lawyers and lawsuits and breach of promise. Breach of promise? I laughed, a cold, empty sound. You were there, Richard. You heard her. You have a dozen witnesses who heard her deliver an ultimatum at a family dinner. She made the continuation of our marriage conditional, and I simply declined the conditions. There was no lawsuit, only the bill for a party that would never happen. I hung up. The next person to show up was Clara herself. That afternoon, she let herself into my house with her key and found me in the living room surrounded by boxes, packing her things. What are you doing? She shrieked, disbelief etched across her face. Helping you move, I said without looking up. You'll need to find a new place to live. You can't kick me out. I live here. No, Clara, I replied, finally standing. You've been staying here. This is my house. My name is on the deed. and your invitation has been revoked. Tomorrow I'll be changing the locks. I suggest you ask your parents to come collect your belongings." That's when her facade broke. The arrogant, confident mask crumbled, revealing a terrified, entitled child. She cried, begged, pleaded. She said she hadn't meant it, that it was just a stupid comment, that she loved me. I stood firm. "The time for that, Clara, was when my mother was at your dinner table being disrespected. The time for that was before you made your ex-boyfriend a condition of our marriage. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." Update 2: the 30 days that followed were a harsh lesson in consequences for Clara. She and her family had lived their whole lives cushioned by money, privilege, and second chances. That world was gone. The first lesson was financial. After a week of threats and posturing, her father finally understood I wasn't paying a cent toward the disaster of the canceled wedding. The final tally of lost deposits and cancellation fees was close to $100,000, a staggering blow even for them. The second lesson was social. They tried to spin the narrative, claiming I'd had a breakdown and ended the engagement without cause. But too many people had been there that night. Clara's ultimatum and my quiet refusal spread quickly through their circle. She wasn't seen as the victim. She was the arrogant fiancée who overplayed her hand and lost everything. Forced out of my house, Clara moved back in with her parents. The atmosphere there was toxic. Facing financial loss and public embarrassment, her parents turned their resentment on her. The thin veneer of their perfect family crumbled, revealing bitterness and dysfunction. And Leo, the ex-boyfriend she once claimed was indispensable, proved to be utterly useless when real life got hard. He had been a fun accessory when she had a stable, successful fiancé. But he wasn't interested in being the safety net for a broke, unemployed, and emotionally volatile single woman. Slowly, quietly, he began to pull away. The calls and texts dwindled. He was suddenly busy, had other plans. In the end, he was just another fair-weather friend. While her world was collapsing, I was rebuilding mine. I took a 2-week trip to Europe, something I'd always dreamed of, but postponed because Clara never wanted to go. I came back refreshed, clear-headed. I threw myself into work and landed the biggest project of my career. I reconnected with old friends who had drifted away, friends who never liked the version of me that existed with Clara that I didn't date. I wasn't interested. I was enjoying the peace, the quiet, the freedom of living entirely on my own terms. A life without the constant minefield of someone else's insecurities. The most satisfying lesson for Clara came 6 months after the breakup. A major architectural journal featured a historic theater I had spent 2 years restoring. It was the pinnacle of my career so far, and the reopening gala was attended by the mayor and some of the most influential people in the city. The article even included a photo of me on stage, accepting an award for the project. Final update: it's been a little over a year since that infamous Sunday dinner. My life has moved forward in ways I never imagined. My company has grown, the theater project opened doors I hadn't dreamed of, and I sold my old house to buy a downtown loft. Industrial steel, exposed brick, clean lines. A place that feels completely mine. About 6 months ago, I started dating again. Her name is Sarah. She's a doctor, kind, brilliant, with a backbone of steel. Her family is warm and loud, a big Italian clan who welcomed me with open arms and way too much pasta. Her past is hers. Mine is mine. And together we're building a future rooted in respect and honesty. I hadn't seen or spoken to Clara in over a year. I had blocked her and her family everywhere, though mutual acquaintances kept me updated. Her parents had sold their mansion and downsized to a condo after her father's finances took a hit, worsened by the canceled wedding costs. Clara was still living with them. She tried to reinvent herself as a life coach, but without my money to fund the site and marketing, the venture went nowhere. She now worked part-time in a high-end boutique, a job she hated. Leo was gone too, engaged to someone else, with no interest in including Clara in his modern, fluid family. The last, unexpected encounter happened a month ago. Sarah and I were at a charity auction, laughing as we bid on a piece of art. Across the room, I saw Clara. She wasn't a guest. She was a volunteer, dressed in black, serving champagne and clearing plates. Our eyes met. She saw me with Sarah, happy, relaxed, utterly indifferent to her existence. For just a second, her mask cracked. Beneath the practiced boredom, her face crumpled with raw regret. Then she turned and slipped into the kitchen before I could fully take in the moment.